I used to be at bed at 10 p.m. and now I'm not in bed until like 2 or 3 in the morning. That's the biggest change. I ended up getting injured in my wrist, two surgeries for it, one in Mumbai and one in Austria. I was injured for about 5 years. It never felt like I was quitting, but it just felt like I'm lost and I don't know what to do next. When I read it for the first time, I was sad with the way that the book was. Young guy who's learning how to tune pianos and he goes through the entire forest of wool and steel. I was lost. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know where I was. I didn't know what I was doing. It was very hard for me to first ask for help or like ask someone like, I don't know what I'm doing. Can you tell me, can you teach me what I can probably do next?
Mia, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you for having me today, and I really appreciate it. And I'd love to be a part of such a community. So thank you for welcoming me.
Absolutely. Listen, the pleasure is definitely all mine. It was good to chat with you, I guess late last year, and good to reconnect with you again to, I guess, unpick a little bit about your story to date. I think there's a lot that, I've taken away
Mhm.
from it, and I'm sure that others can learn as well. So I appreciate you taking out the time to join us here on the Second Wind Academy podcast today. Now, I figure, let's jump in. Let's everyone, let myself and everyone else who's listening know a little bit about who you are, or more importantly, what you're up to and where you're at today.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, as everyone knows, I'm Mia, but I'm also Mithula Umakanth, who is the international badminton player up until a few years ago. I'm currently pursuing a Master's of Finance at University of California, Irvine. Um, this was a long journey going from studies, sport, and then back to studies. So, I mean, we will be covering that shortly, but I don't want to get too much into it right now. I did complete a postgraduate diploma when I was in India, focusing again on finance and entrepreneurship because those were areas that I'm really interested in. And I just knew that I wanted to get more exposure and see the world,
Mm.
and explore everything that is out there. And so I decided to pursue my master's in the United States.
That's brilliant. And how long have you been there now?
Um, it's about 5.5 months so far. Yeah. So I'm closing in on my 6 month anniversary soon.
Fantastic. Listen, it is so good to get to chat to you again so early into at least your
Mhm.
latest adventures overseas. And, in this
Mhm.
close to
Mhm.
6 months, what do you think has been, I guess, one of the biggest differences? In fact, yeah, what do you think has been one of the biggest differences from being at home, let's say?
Oh, a lot. Um, I've I've learned a lot of new things about me itself, which is astonishing for me. Like I was not a night owl. I used to be at bed at 10 p.m. and now I'm not in bed until like 2 or 3 in the morning. That's the biggest change. I've met so many new people, so many new cultures, so many new food. But through all of that, I still somehow felt like I was at home. Very surprising for me because I didn't know I could adapt to change as quickly as I have over here.
Mm.
But it's been a very, very interesting journey, especially because I feel I was prepared for it. I feel like I came with it with the athlete mindset that I always had, but I just changed it in the current world that I am. And that's what made change very easy. That's what made adapting to a new country, to new laws and cultures very easy, and making friends in a completely new world very easy.
Yeah. Do you know, I love, and we're going to touch on the athlete mindset a little bit more. One of the bits that actually astonishes me, if I'll use that word, is sleep is one of the most important things when we think about being an athlete. That recovery, that sleep pattern, and the habits that we would drill into ourselves. Here, you've just spoken about a complete shift in well, what sounds like your body clock and working hours. One, what do you put that down to? And secondly, how do you think that's impacted your performance or your focus?
Mm, very good question. Um, it hasn't, I would like to think that it hasn't impacted my focus as much,
Yeah.
because I'm still doing decently well in my academics while managing everything else in this new country and the craziness that I've gotten myself into. Um, it has, I have definitely made new friends. I've friends like family. And I think that's what really has pushed my bedtime as well, because you usually get time only in the nights to hang out with, your friends and, also study.
Hmm.
So that's probably why my bedtime is pushed. I still do work out and I still follow my routine, especially wherever I can as an athlete. What I used to do, I still try and do that. And I think that's what's keeping me sane. But I don't think my focus has shifted. I think yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. That we've delved into another topic for me there. I'll have to pick your brains on another call then about this sleep pattern.
Hmm.
Well, and that shift,
Yeah.
just that whole recovery piece. But again, I
Yeah.
suppose it leads into this overall change,
Hmm.
and we're here talking about
Hmm.
that career transition. But I suppose there's also,
Hmm.
shouldn't forget that athletic and transition that you've gone
Hmm.
through, and here you're talking about social, so even your surroundings and creating friends
Hmm.
like family. So within this
hmm
or surrounding this the shift for you, I guess we've got all of these different factors that could be considered.
hmm Yes. Definitely. All of these factors have been, how would I say this? They've been very impactful.
Mm.
Um, and I think that just there's a lot of things that is coming at you at once, a lot of overwhelming things that are not in your control. I think that's also another aspect of change that we as athletes get used to, but also not used to when we're going through this transition. Um, and especially like when I was towards the end of my sporting career, that was the hardest for me, and I'm sure we'll touch on that.
Mhm.
But that was like the time when I thought, okay, this is the time I should be exploring other things and not just stick to sports, because initially that's what I thought I would be doing for the rest of my life. And so I tried working in public policy. I tried working in a nonprofit organization. I tried working with big corporate firms, and somewhere I just felt like I wasn't ready for it.
Mhm.
And also I felt like I was still in the process of grieving the loss that I had just had with one career ending and then suddenly shifting on to something that you've never thought of in your life.
Mhm. Yeah.
And in this process, I kind of lost myself and then found myself again. And now, 4 or 5 years down the line since I first got injured, I finally feel like I'm at a place where I'm comfortable with who I am. And I think that process of change and adaptation
Yeah.
is what really this whole foreign experience also is.
Well, yeah. I mean, by going through, like you say, the process is about change. It's adapting to that change, and you have thrown yourself in another environment or another change by moving countries. It sounds like there's been some great experimentation beforehand, but you've really upped the change and I guess tested yourself in terms of that adaptability or your ability
Hmm.
to really thrive in this new environment. So before we come,
Hmm.
so I want to, so we'll come back to where you are in the US and some of the lessons that have come out of it. To give us context then as to, I guess, what's
Hmm.
got you here today. Let's go all the way back and let's talk a bit about you growing up sport back home. So, where was home, and how did sport start to influence your life?
Mm. So home is Bangalore in India, and I played badminton. So I started playing badminton when I was 9. This was a very, how would I say, it was an ad hoc event actually, because one of our family friends used to play badminton herself. She was a national champion. And I was kind of a chubby kid, and then my parents were looking at ways to, get me fit. And they suggested, why don't you try badminton? She might find it fun because before that I was doing dancing and everything, and it was just not working out for me. So I picked up the racket, and within 6 months I won my first national medal, which was crazy at that time already. And so they were like, "Oh, we found something that she's good at, and we're gonna do this now." I think I just kind of catapulted my way into badminton like that, and it had a huge impact. I My whole life was around badminton, including my study schedule, and my whole life schedule was around badminton for all the childhood that I can think of. And but it was also a lot of fun. It taught me a lot of lessons. It taught me how to deal with pain, how to deal with winning, how to deal with losing as well, dealing with how to be dominant throughout, how to be consistent with training every day, also how to plan a lot of different things like that. But
Yeah.
that's what I really picked up when I was an athlete
Hmm.
back home.
And so
Hmm.
thinking about you growing up, you found this sport. It sounds like your parents already by 8, 9 were quite desperate to get you out, and active. At what point? So yeah, okay, 9 years old, you win a national championship. At what point did you start to think this is a career? There's something else here.
Hmm. I think that would be after my first national championship medal, but that was not nine, but I would say the first national championship medal in the senior category. So if I was under 13, I was already winning under 15 national championship.
Right.
And that's when we kind of realized that, oh, this girl has some talent.
Hmm.
And even like some renowned coaches in India were seeing that. And I was lucky enough to have them as my mentors and coaches all through my life.
Right.
So, so I think all of those factors really helped. And I also I fell in love with the sport. And when you fall in love with something that's so interesting and you want to do every day, it kind of just becomes something that you want to do.
Yeah, that's right. Well, what is it about the sport that you fell in love with?
A lot of things. It was fast paced. It was a lot of strategic thinking. It was doing the thing that you're doing, but doing it perfectly. And so this is something that one of my mentors told me when I was very young. His name is Mr. Prakash Padukone. And this is something that he constantly drills us about, and even to this day. So he says that sport or anything in life is about the three Ds: discipline, determination, and dedication. And I think those three are the things that also made me fall in love with the sport because I just fell in love with how you can innovate a stroke, make it a little more perfect, make it a little more accurate. You can just, you can play the same thing in a different way. You can start anticipating the opponent in this way. And for me, all of that was very fascinating. I enjoyed every bit of it, and I think that's why I fell in love with the sport.
Brilliant. When you were falling in love, you're 13, 14, 15 years old, where you fall in love with a sport, where did academia play? What role did that start to play in your life?
Academia was on the back foot. I'll be completely honest. As an athlete in India, especially who's doing decently well, you usually start focusing more on the sport itself because you kind of achieve a status of celebrity around your local surrounding.
Mhm.
So everyone's like, oh, this person has to go and win the next championship. Like, if you're not winning that, then what are you? So the entire focus was on the sport and not on my academics. My school was very supportive actually at that point. They were like, you're doing amazingly well in sport. Go ahead. Yeah, and you just have to come in, write your exams, and we'll help you in preparing for it, help you learn what you need to learn and progress to the next grade.
Mhm.
So all my life, especially all my badminton life, I was mostly focused on sport itself.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I really got injured and then towards the end of it, where I was almost done with the injury, I was like, I want something else, is when I actually start focusing on academics again.
Mm. Right. So for you, study, school definitely was second to sport. So at that time, as you were starting to see, or certainly hitting that 16 or 8, well, in fact, I should ask, at what point does it become full time? Or when were you able to leave school and focus or make a decision to focus full time to an extent on sport?
For me, again, I was a special case because when I was 13, like I mentioned, I already was winning under
Yeah.
15 titles. So because of that, and because they saw that I had the talent, I kind of transitioned into playing full time from when I was 13 itself.
Oh, wow.
It's not common. Yeah, it's
Mm.
not common for someone that early on. But it really depends on your support system. Like maybe your parents want you to do it full time, so maybe they'll hire coaches and everything. But
Mhm.
for me, that was the case.
Right.
Yeah, so I started playing it full time when I was 13, and so that's high school. Like middle
Yeah.
school and high school was spent in badminton.
So give me some
Yeah.
a couple of questions then to just to give context, because how far did you dream of going in badminton? What was that dream? What was that target for you? And before you answer that question,
For me, yeah.
I want to know, badminton to me is, I'm a football player. Football, massive, global, everyone, it's everything. Not just Olympics, but across all the sport. The money that's in it, I can see it across all these different sports. Badminton to me, I will watch religiously every 4 years at the Olympics, right? Um, but I don't know much more about badminton on a global scale or on an India scale. How big is badminton in India, and where could it get you to?
Mm, okay. I'll start with the second question first. So badminton is huge. Starting from India, it's the second biggest sport in India right now. It comes just after cricket.
Amazing.
So if you know, cricket is richer than the International Cricket Association. So the Indian Cricket Association is richer than the International Cricket Association. The next richest sport in India is badminton. And some of our biggest stars that have come out of our Indian sport, especially badminton, um, have landed in the Forbes richest athletes section. If that gives you a
Mm.
context of how much money is there in badminton
Perfect.
in India.
Because it did surprise.
On the global scale,
It's just amazing. Uh,
mhm.
those stats, those numbers, as you call it, I just thought, it shocked me. I'm sure many of those listening will be like, yeah, didn't everyone need to know that? No, no, this is good. Yeah, so please keep going.
Yeah, on the global scale, badminton is picking up now. Traditionally, it's more of an Asian and a European sport, but right now it's picking up in the US as well. And obviously, it's also moving down south in Australia and New Zealand. And I think as more people kind of migrate and go on to these different continents, it's just going to grow. Especially with the 2028 LA Olympics, we're going to see a lot more activity in the US. On a global scale, there are a lot of endorsements, there are a lot of tournaments and championships. Just like tennis, there's Wimbledon. In badminton, there's something known as All England Championships. That's something that happens every year, and it's like the biggest championship in the world for badminton, other than the World Championship, of course. And there's also something known as the World Super Series Finals that happens every year. It used to be in Dubai, but now it keeps changing, sometimes in China, sometimes in a different Asian country. But those are like the biggest events other than the Olympics, of course. And the prize money is also in an increasingly high amount these days, but we're not going to get into those numbers.
No, no. So then, for you, growing up in India, you are a young teenager, are winning national,
Mhm.
or you're a national player. Tell me, where were the dreams? What did you want to achieve?
For me, I was lucky. I also had the liberty to dream a lot. So for me, I wanted to be an Olympic champion. I wanted to win the gold medal for our country. That meant to win the Olympic championship, you also would mean winning the All England, winning the World Championships, being world number one, and all the yada yada that goes with it. So that was my dream, and I was on the road to reach that dream. I was actually the youngest on the Indian national team. Um, I used to play doubles and mixed doubles, and I was the youngest women player in the international team when I did join it, and I was preparing for it. And so yes, that was where I ended up reaching, at least.
Yeah, I mean that's brilliant. Well, getting to number one, making that national team in the second most popular sport in a country of over 1 billion people, and for you to be doing that at a young age is clearly fantastic. And I'm sure at the time it was feeling good, and you really could see where your career was going. So what happened?
So I everything was going great. My career finally felt like it was getting off to where I wanted it to. But then I ended up getting injured in my wrist. So this was a very rare case. It was called avascular necrosis to my lunate bone, which is a specific bone in the 9 bones that are there in the wrist. And that essentially meant that the bone was not receiving enough blood supply and started dying out. No, there's no stability in your wrist, and there's also no given method of solving this problem. So the treatment was all trial and error. I ended up getting 2 surgeries for it, one in Mumbai and one in Austria. All the second one at least was a fairly new treatment that they had devised. And by the time I got back, COVID also happened. And obviously that set me back in my whole rehabilitation and the entire process of getting back into sport. So I was injured for about 5 years or so.
Yeah.
And I kind of pushed through it. I played for the majority of those 5 years. But then towards the end of it, I kind of felt like it was a lot. It was too draining. And so I wanted to see what else I can do.
So I mean, you're number one. You're in the national teams. You're in the Olympic prep teams, preparing, for that Olympic cycle to come through. This injury sets you back, and for someone so young, all you'd known was growing up that badminton. At that point, so during that period, what was probably the biggest challenge, sort of mentally, that you were facing at that time?
There were a lot of challenges, to be honest. It felt like something that I knew all my life was just being taken away from me. But actually, this was something that Mr. Gopichand, he's the chief national coach in India, he told me, is that if you can't train, if you can't play with your hand, it's okay. Make sure that you continue to train your other body parts. Make sure you're still fit, and make sure that you're not starting from zero or back, but you're starting from where you left off. And just think about what you can do right now in this particular moment. Don't worry about what you can't control, because I can't do the surgery or I can't make my wrist better myself, but I can work on myself. I can stay positive as much as I can. I can indulge in the activities that I wanted to do. Like, I remember I started doing Zumba during that period because I just wanted to try it. I did Pilates for a while because I wanted to try something new. And then I definitely started watching Korean dramas at that point. I think that's how I ended up learning Korean too. So I started doing these activities and kind of like distracted myself. Oh, another thing was I stayed away from badminton. I never went to the court. I never watched any of my peers play. I I just swore off it. I used to just
Why?
go to the gym and I used to just go back home. I never.
During this period of being injured, with the hope of coming back to play, you stayed away. What made you think that was the best approach for you?
For me, that was the best approach because when I would see somebody else playing or doing something, I'm someone who like when I see somebody playing badminton, I want to play. And once I start playing, I don't feel any pain, especially when I'm playing, but I know I'll feel the pain afterwards. But when I'm playing, I don't feel the pain. So I knew it would be too hard for me to go back on court and see the others playing the sport itself. And so I ended up staying away from it for as long as I couldn't play. So let's say I was, the entire process of having the surgery and rehab was around 6 months. So for those 6 months, I did not go to the court unless I had to go do some footwork drills or like something that has really needed me to be back on court.
Interesting.
And even at that time, I would usually end up going when nobody else was playing so that I don't see others playing, but I'm still doing what I needed to do.
Yeah.
And another thing that I did was I used to visualize myself playing on court again whenever I could, because I didn't want to see others play, but I wanted to see myself playing again. So I would visualize myself playing at those times. And I think that helped a lot because immediately after my first surgery, and I played a national championship, the senior national championship.
Hmm.
Um, and I won a bronze medal when that was like trial tournament that we wanted to do.
Yeah.
So I ended up winning a bronze medal in that championship, and I went on to play in the Asian Championship with the team for India.
Yeah.
Again, my race did not get better, but I was still injured,
Yeah.
but I did end up doing all of that, and I felt my approach really helped me at that point.
Okay, that's an interesting approach to take. It is. It certainly served you, and certainly one I'm going to think about a little bit more as well. So, given that return, the injury, what is it that made you think now's the time to retire?
Mhm. I was injured. So as I mentioned, I was injured for 5 years, and it just felt like it was too prolonged, and I was too young. Like at that point, when at the end of my fifth year, I was still just 22. And I was like, I can't be doing this for the rest of my life. And I felt very stuck in a place where I didn't want to be. And so I was like, what else is there that I can do? I wanted to see what else I am capable of as a person because I thought that it was too restrictive to be just a badminton player. I appreciate it truly, but then I felt like there's more to me than just that, and I wanted to explore that side of me too.
So, given that, when did you start to realize this is going to be the end, and what did you do first?
So I kind of started realizing this would be the end, towards the end of the first COVID lockdown, like when I started going back to rehab and started playing again,
Hmm.
because my wrist still hurt even after that. And the only other option that the doctors again suggested was having a third surgery. And I'd already had two. I wasn't ready to go on for another surgery either because it was just taking too much of a toll mentally as well, because constantly getting surgeries is not easy. And that was also a point when I was like, what else can I do right now that can kind of, change my trajectory and I find something that's interesting for me.
Hmm.
I love reading, so I started reading a lot of books. I
What?
started talking to people in, sorry, you were
What?
saying?
I was saying, what did you read?
Oh, okay. I had different phases. But I had this phase where I was reading a lot about Indian history and Itihasa. We call it Itihasa. So that's the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. I had a phase where I was reading a lot of crime and thrillers and mysteries.
Yeah.
I had a phase where I was reading a lot about the financial statuses of banks and the crimes that have happened in the past, and these true documentary style books.
Hmm.
There was this phase where I used to read these feel good books, like the slice of life books.
Yeah.
Um, there's actually a very good suggestion. I would suggest everyone to read this book called The Forest of Wool and Steel. That resonated with me a lot when I was trying and getting out of my phase.
Yes.
And I read it again now, and I get something totally out of it.
Right. I was going to say, what is it about that book recommendation? It's something that we'll have to put in the show notes. So,
Mhm,
what is it about that book recommendation
mhm.
that others should follow? Come on, we're going to start Mia's book club now.
Okay, so I wouldn't say it is a suggestion. I just feel it's more like an emotion
Hmm.
because when I read it for the first time, I was sad with the way that the book was being like led, like especially when he's going and so it's about this young guy who's learning how to tune pianos and he goes through the entire forest of wool and steel. He calls it a forest of wool and steel because it's um very peaceful and very tranquil for him when he's doing that exact work.
Hmm.
And getting to that space took him a lot of time. The first time that I read it was very sad for me because I felt like I was exiting from my forest of wool and steel.
Right. Yeah.
But the next time I read it, which was pretty recently, I kind of liked the book again because now I felt like I was entering into a new zone and I was entering into a new forest where I was, kind of finding myself again.
Right.
So it wasn't more about what's a suggestion from that book, but I felt like when you read it at different points of times, you have different perspectives and different relatability to that kind of a book.
Yes. Yeah. Well, there you go. There's the recommendation. It's something I'm now going to have to get as well. So when we chat again, I'll be able to tell you at least my perspective
Mhm,
on what I heard. Well, look, coming back to you then
mhm,
on exiting your forest of wool and steel, hopefully
mhm.
software, you are entering it. But for you at that time, you've decided that it's time to exit the sport. You're still young. What did you decide to do?
The first thing I did was I got an internship in public policy actually. And this was from one of my mentors that I used to met, speak to a little bit, but not that much. I was just in touch with him.
Hmm.
And I told him that, hey, I think I'm gonna quit sport because it's not working out for me anymore. And I don't know what to do. And he was like, you should try. You should explore, go see different working spaces, try and understand what you really want to do and who you are as a person. And so the first thing I did was join him, and I was doing a lot of research work with him.
Yeah.
It was in macroeconomics and in political science.
Well, Mia, how
That wasn't for me.
how did you know?
Yeah.
Well, good. So what I'm taking from this is great. You spoke to someone you trusted, and with that person, you said, "Look,
Hmm.
you're ready to leave." They give you what I think is also great advice, which is, "Let's go out and get you trying something different, get you away from the sport, try something
Hmm.
new." Through, I
Hmm.
guess, their connections, they got you into public policy.
Hmm.
Um, how did you
Hmm.
know? I mean, like seriously, how do you know how to do research, use a computer, do this? What were you? Where did you get that type of experience from? So you knew how to at least be effective.
Hmm. So, I think the one quality that he really liked was I used to read a lot even before I got into his internship. So we used to discuss about books and, we just knew that I liked reading. And if you're doing research, then you should know how to read. So I think that was the biggest skill that I had that he kind of liked. And he also knew that I used to be an athlete. And there are a lot of these transferable skills that we don't really know as athletes when we are doing it. But now when you're transitioning and when you're trying to figure out who you really are, it's something that you really need to learn and
Yeah.
identify. I had those. I think I was always on time. I was very dedicated. I would make sure I have my notes ready. I was very strategic about whatever I was doing. Like if I was doing something, it was documented through and through. Like I've done this,
Yeah.
this, this on this day.
Sounds like you're bringing out your.
And
So yeah, I get that. That was coming back to you already. I mean, so interesting then that you did that and you practiced it, and it sounded like you were just saying it wasn't for you. I'm curious, how did you know it wasn't something you wanted to be in?
so for me, it just took on like it felt a little too weighted when I was doing the job because it was obviously it was more for the people and it felt like I was doing a lot of social work and empathizing with a lot of people and especially when you start empathizing a lot you kind of get into this feeling from others person's perspectives, right? And when you're doing that, it kind of weighs you itself. And I myself was trying to get out of a very bad situation, and then taking on another person's emotions or feelings was just getting too much for me. Obviously, it was macroeconomics and political work, but when you come down, you have to also think about how those policies are going to impact the people that you're trying to reach.
Hmm.
And the people that you're trying to reach part was what was really weighing me down, and I couldn't take that any longer. So I knew at that point that that was not something that I wanted to do for the long term.
How did that feel? You're just coming from being a number one, injuries stopping you from finalizing the dream. And here you are, a few months in after period, sorry, into this internship, and you're like, "Well, this isn't for me. I'm done." Uh, Is is that quitting?
It felt like I was quitting. And I felt very lost. I'll be very honest. I felt very lost. I didn't know what I was doing with my life. I think my biggest win at that point was journaling. I used to write every day, and I used to write pages and pages of paper, but I don't even know what I used to write, but I was just writing it. And yeah, I was completely and utterly lost. And but I had a very good support system. I thankfully still have a very good support system, and I had a lot of people who helped me find other opportunities and find um, different avenues that I could explore. So I wasn't ever idle at home. And I think that was a very important thing for me because I have this personality where I can't just sit in one place and dwell on things.
Right.
I need to be doing something. And I think that's for most athletes too. Like, I don't think we can just sit and do nothing. We need something. We need a game plan.
Yes. Yeah.
And that was how it was for me. And so I was very lucky in that I had people around me who knew that, who respected that, and who helped me get to that. So I had very little transition time from this public policy internship into my next, which was in marketing, sports business and sports marketing. And that was also very interesting. But again, when it got back into sports, it just came back a circle. And I was
Yeah.
again feeling weighted down because I couldn't play sports anymore, right?
Hmm.
So whatever I did with sports in in that one year, I felt like I just wasn't ready for it. And I was like, I'm sorry. As much as I enjoy doing this, I can't go back to that because I just got out of it. So that's how I ended up quitting all of those opportunities that I had, and it never felt like I was quitting, but it just felt like I'm lost and I don't know what to do
Well,
next.
and I think that is that's completely understandable, and perhaps leading the witness by using the word quitting. But it's one of those where, as athletes, you
Hmm.
always feel you want to push and effectively succeed. What you're describing, though, is
Hmm.
yeah, and as you said, you were lost, and you were therefore exploring a way out or
Hmm.
through this current situation that you found
Hmm.
yourself in. And I actually
Hmm.
commend you because what you
Hmm.
were able to do was you had the courage to go and try something, public policy or going down in the sports marketing and business route, and been able then to have the courage to be able to say, this isn't what I want to do. I'm destined for something else. And then you were able to step out and proactively create your future by saying, right, I'm going to go and try something else. So I actually say that's bravo. It is a really good way to approach coming through or navigating a career transition. And so for you coming
Hmm.
out then from this marketing, you had that courage to say, look, this isn't for me. At this moment, how much did you then pause and get a game plan and put one in place?
A lot. So at that point, I kind of decided that this was, I think, 2 years ago. That was when I kind of decided that I wanted to go abroad, because that's when I wanted to, explore the different cultures and learn from what's out there in the world and not just be, you know, secluded to what I was. And as an athlete, I had that opportunity because I got to travel a lot to Europe and across Asia, and I wanted to do that a lot more, and I wanted to do it for a longer term. Um, and so I knew that this is what I wanted to do, and I obviously needed time to get ready for that as well. So that's why I stopped. I did the postgraduate diploma for a year,
Mhm.
um, which actually it was for a year. So I did that, and that was a requirement because that helped me prepare for myself academically. Because up until this point, even my undergrad that I did, I was still playing. I was still an athlete, so it was on the back burner.
Yeah.
So this was the first original opportunity that I had to really focus on academics and come back with my A game. And because I was back home in India with my support system around me, I always knew if I needed anything, I always had people to fall back on. And that just made that whole process of getting back into academics and preparing for, a career abroad
Yeah.
much easier for me than it probably would have been if I could. Yeah.
Okay. So at that moment, you took a pause to figure out you want to go overseas. You wanted to explore something that was abroad. To make that happen, you
Mhm.
decided to go and study. You did a postgrad. What was it in?
Mhm. Mhm. So it was in finance and entrepreneurship because I wanted to do something other than that. Like I had done marketing, I had done product management, I had done a little bit of HR work, and I didn't want to do operations. So in business, that only left with finance, and I wanted to try that out. So I ended up joining that course, and then I ended up getting another internship in finance.
Mm-hmm.
And I really enjoyed the finance aspect of that internship, and so I knew that this is what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't just that function. I wanted to do something else and also explore other areas.
Yeah.
And so I kind of honed in on finance at that point. And yeah, and then I also knew, like, that's why I said that that 1 year of the course that I did really helped me pick out what I wanted to do and also helped me come back or at least bring my A game when I'm coming here to study.
Yes. Yeah. And so was the US always that aspiration?
hmm
Yeah.
Um, I actually, I don't think I would call it an aspiration. I think it was more like a goal. I, at this point, okay, so ever since like,
Yeah. So you got,
I quit playing sport, I don't think I have any aspirations.
oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I have aspirations. I think I rather live on setting short-term goals and achieving those goals and then setting new goals and achieving those than having big aspirations or long-term goals like we would generally have. I know this is something that a lot of life coaches and a lot of people will say, like, have a long-term goal and then break it down into short-term goals and then break it down into tasks and blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
But I think my perspective on that changed when sport changed. And so I decided that I would rather focus on what I can achieve in a day, in 3 months, in 6 months, and probably a year, than focus on what will happen 5 years down the line.
You know, it's interesting. You speak about grieving, and you grieved the loss of badminton, and what you there was that aspiration, but that dream that you had. And it's like you then realized, well, there's more to life. I need to live in the moment and enjoy it, and be present. And your description of that, goes hand in hand with that description of grieving. So it moved you away from saying there's no point in setting long-term goals because you never know what's going to happen. I'm going to make the most of what I've got now and set much shorter term goals. So for you then, achieving the goal, like you said, now I know you're in the US, but I'm curious, who did you reach out to? How, because you've done a few things between now and where you are today. So talk to me about reaching out to different networks and starting to connect. What was it that started to open your eyes to these networks outside India?
Right. So for we had like a family friend who was living here in the US
Mm-hmm.
for almost 20, 30 years now.
Yeah.
So she was my first point of contact when I even thought of studying abroad. And she was the reason why I'm in California today.
Mm-hmm.
She is the reason why I'm in California today.
Yeah.
And I also and I also like have a few cousins in and around the US, and I think that's kind of why it we honed on to US because even like we have a support system, even though it's not something that we had tapped into before, we still know we at least have people around who can help us.
Yeah.
So I think that's why I kind of honed into USA itself.
Mm.
Um, but other than that, it was usually, I say this is something that comes from our culture as well. As Indians, we are people who like communities. And we always have a friend of a friend who's willing to help us. And so I think it was just that going out there and being vulnerable and saying, I'm going to do this, and I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. What do you think? I think that's what really, kind of opened up the network.
Yes. Yeah. You've mentioned your support network time and time again, both as an athlete and now in this period of transition. And what's interesting is how that support network has sort of moved and morphed from sporting to mentor, family at home and abroad. And so tapping into that sounds like it has been a real, well, I guess a strong source of strength for you, but also giving you direction and helped you make some of those
Mhm.
decisions.
Yes, definitely. And I think my biggest support system, my biggest cheerleaders, my biggest friends, whatever you want to call it, are my parents.
Hmm.
I wouldn't be who I am without them. I wouldn't be into, or I wouldn't even have the capability or the courage to do what I am if it wasn't for their encouragement.
Hmm.
And I've been very lucky in terms of my support system because, as I mentioned, like the mentors that I've had, they're all.
Hi, it's Ryan Gonsalves here. Thanks for tuning in today. I just want to take a moment to ask you an important favor. To help grow this channel, one thing will do that above more than anything else. Please hit that subscribe button. By hitting that subscribe button, you help me to grow the channel, allowing me to create more tailored content, improving the quality, and also to develop additional services such as the workshops, one-on-one sessions specifically designed to support elite athletes in that difficult transition to that career beyond sport. So if you want to join me on this journey to help inspire, guide, and connect individuals to find their second wind, please hit that subscribe button.
Really amazing people, and the mentors that I meet every day, even here in the US,
Mhm.
they're all really amazing people, really kind, and I kind of learn something new from each and every one of them every time I meet them.
Yes.
And I just find that we as people are very interesting, and there's always something that I can learn from these people.
Yeah.
And that's how I kind of get my encouragement and my direction because I'm just keen to learn more.
Mm. Yeah. Super interesting. Now, so with that desire to learn more, I'm interested in your time at EY and the program that you applied there. Talk to me about how you found out about it and what you had to do to prepare to get
Mhm,
into it.
mhm. So the EY Athlete Career Readiness Program is basically for elite athletes who are either retired or are currently in the transition of retiring. And it is an invitation only program. I heard it through this firm called Athlete Career Transitions. It's led by Andy Moore. I was introduced to Athlete Career Transitions by one of my friends who himself was with them for a few months. And he was like, this is probably going to be perfect for you now that you're going abroad. So they introduced me to this EY program and I kind of did the application. There wasn't much that I had to prepare. I just had a conversation with their recruiting team and they liked who I was
Hmm.
and they thought that I was a perfect fit for the program. And that's how I ended up being a part of it.
Great.
So I think your story and how you portray, I think that's all that really matters.
Yeah. Yeah. And so in that program, because you're still in India at this time, how geographically, time wise, how did that fit in with where you wanted to be? T- what time was it that you had to do? Remind me the calls and the sessions.
So we started the program after I came to the United States.
Yeah.
We started it in September,
Yeah.
and that was also my first quarter at UCI. So
Right. Okay.
crazy,
So,
but that's me.
yeah, this timing. This was a bit. So,
Uh,
so the timing is all. This is all coming together then for you. So you're doing the EY and
yes.
doing your study as well.
Hmm. Yes.
Crazy.
So I was okay. So to give you context, I was a TA in that quarter. I was in my first quarter over here, and I had like four different subjects, and I also had the EY athlete program to look at.
Hmm.
And for the EY athlete program, we used to have these workshops at 5 a.m.
Yeah.
It's not their fault. They're really trying to be inclusive because athletes are going to be across the globe
Yeah.
in this particular program, and they're just trying to make sure that everyone is able to get on call. And like I said, I'm just glad it was me and not somebody else. Um, but yes, it was a very interesting experience
Mm.
to wake up at 5 a.m. and listen to all of them talk about their experiences as an athlete, to meet some of the leadership at EY, to also learn so many new things from their experiences at being in EY for so long and also transitioning, some of them were athletes, so transitioning from being an athlete to a full-time corporate employee. So that was a very interesting experience.
And what do you feel you took out from that experience, and how is it helping you today?
I think the biggest learning that I had from the EY program was problem solving and critical thinking. These are two aspects that they do cover in the entire course. So again, the course is broken down into three stages, and you get to focus on the leadership track or the technology track. I did the leadership track. Some people do both the leadership and the technology track. And through this course, you will have like an introduction where you're doing design thinking, you're learning about Microsoft Excel, PowerPoint, Power BI, Tableau, data visualization, like using that, but also like data analysis, like statistics and stuff. While you're also doing like, because I did leadership, then they are also learning about the different kinds of leadership, how to lead teams, how to manage conflict within a team and stuff like that. For me, problem solving was the biggest takeaway because structuring your problem solving approach in a framework, like maybe putting it in a decision tree or an issue tree, or like breaking it down into a fishbone diagram just to get to the root cause, stuff like that is not something that comes very natural. Like I know problem solving, but how do you do that in the business world? I think that was my biggest takeaway.
Fantastic. I love all of those frameworks. That's exactly where that's my sweet spot. That's great. So we're kind of getting to where we are today, and I'm interested throughout all of the transition that you're going through to this point. What has been the hardest part for you to navigate?
I think it was initially when I had to first move away from sport into something else. Now that I look back, I see that that was the hardest point when it was for me because I was lost.
Mhm,
I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know where I was. I didn't know what I was doing, and I was just lost.
mhm.
But I think that was the hardest. I didn't know it at that point, but now that I look back, I do know that that was where I was the probably lowest emotionally as well.
So
Um,
it's funny you
yeah.
say you didn't know it at the time because I can resonate with that. I didn't realize that was a difficult moment in my life until I look back. I'm curious then for you, when you do look back, what is it about that situation or that time that tells you it was such a hard time?
I think it was just the fact that one, I was lost, but two, I was very reluctant to ask for any help. There was this period for probably like 6 months or a year where I just didn't want to show anyone that I'm not doing well
Hmm.
emotionally or physically at that point, where I'm just like, I'm gonna tough it out. I'm gonna show everyone I'm always smiling and I'm happy and I'm okay. But you're not. And it's okay to not be okay. And that was a very hard lesson. And it was very hard for me to first ask for help or like ask someone like, I don't know what I'm doing. Can you tell me, can you teach me what I can probably do next?
Mhm.
And yeah, I think when I first did that, it was very hard, but then slowly I kind of saw how people were also welcoming and kind and willing to answer my questions and be very open and responsive. And I think that that kind of opened my mind and it made me more vulnerable.
Brilliant. Yeah. Again, I resonate. I can definitely see that in my world, the bit about not asking for help is something I see at that period in my life as well. Whereas typically now I'll just say, "Hey, can you help me do this? I don't know how to do that," and I'll quite naturally do it. It's almost not being I'll say authentic. I can't think of a better word right now, but not being our true self then at that moment.
Yes.
Yeah. So when you look at yourself, so right now, here you are, you're studying, definitely moving forward. What's, at least then I'll say, what's the short term goal for you? What are you there? What are you in the US to achieve?
hmm well, immediately right now is getting a job. And yeah, I think I just want to get a job and pay off my own student loan and explore more of the United States. I definitely want to go and travel across the United States, especially Midwest and to the East Coast, because I'm on the West Coast.
Mhm.
I want to like go across the United States, see how every state is different, because I hear a lot about how each state is different here, and I want to explore that and really see it for myself. I think that's what I want to do in the short run right now.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's it. And I know, well, there isn't too much that goes beyond there. But what I am going to ask is, I asked you why you fell in love. What was it about badminton that enabled you to fall in love with it? And you talked about this fast pace and strategic thinking. As I listen to you now, looking into that world, in the world of finance, problem solving, so that strategic thinking sounds like something that really resonates with you. Have you, to what extent have you then considered what environment or workspace you would want to find yourself in?
It's something that I think about every day. And it's also something that I think about whenever I'm having these conversations and coffee chats with people who are working in those firms. Like, I really want to know what kind of culture they have, what kind of people are there on the team. And I really want to know, if I would fit into that team.
Hmm.
Because I feel like if I'm not respected in some place, it's going to be very hard for me. I think it's going to be hard for everyone, but for me, that's a very important feeling. And I usually get that as soon as I speak with somebody from the team and I kind of understand where the hierarchy lies or how they do things. And that's a very, very important thing for me. Like I need to know how they do things. If that suits my working style, then I think I'm all in.
Yeah. So thinking about your traits, and you spoke about discipline, determination, and dedication. What do you think from your sporting world you have brought with you into this, the study period, this exploration? What are those key traits and skills that you feel you brought with you?
I still follow the three Ds very sincerely. It's something that's going to be with me for the rest of my life. Um, Discipline, especially when I'm studying. I always make sure my assignments are done and dusted before I go hang out or go play or do whatever. I'm very determined in the goals that I have for now, trying to achieve them. But again, the metrics that I'm using to achieve them are very different. Yes, the end goal is getting a job, but I am satisfied if I know that I've put in my maximum effort. And I'm obviously dedicated. That's why I'm now focused so much on finance, and
Yeah.
I'm learning a lot in this 6 months. Actually, it's not been 6 months. It's been like four months since my course started,
Yeah.
and I've I've learned a lot. These 4 months have gone really quickly, but I can see the growth and the change in me as well, especially in my financial knowledge. Like I kind of now understand what they're talking about. I understand when I look at the news or when I'm reading some news article about why the markets are crashing, then I'm suddenly like, oh, why is this happening? Like, didn't we discuss this in class? What theory or the concept was this related to and stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been very fascinating for me.
Brilliant. Brilliant. And so now for you, if your younger self, or if any of, in fact, I'm going to ask it a different way. If you think about your peer group, those athletes who you grew up with playing against, who are now, as we actually haven't mentioned on this call, but as we've spoken before, are achieving their greatness. If they come to you and say, I know it's going to end at some point, what should I be doing to best set me up for a career transition like you have done? What would you say to them?
I would first say congratulations on doing the first step. Just coming and asking somebody else on what I can do itself is huge. And congratulations, you're doing an amazing job. And the next thing I would say is, um, what would you like to know first? Like, what is something that really interests you and something that you really, really want to know how it works? Because for me, that was the case when I first did the public policy internship. It was just like, why is the government running like this? Why is economics like this? Why is this the policy? Like, we could probably do something better. Um, and so that was how I ended up doing that internship. And so that's what I would say, I would suggest them do. Like, if you're interested in books, then look into publishing. If you're interested, or maybe write. I'm pretty sure we could end up having really good stories about ourselves if you're really interested in writing. Or if you're interested in, films or Korean dramas or any of these newer dramas that are coming, then explore how that business works or how it is shot or go into your own creative space. I would just say look into what interests you the most.
I like that. You've said one, congrats on being open, or at least thinking about what you want to be doing next, recognizing you will be shifting career. Secondly, is following what you might be interested in. I think it's the element that you said
Hmm.
I really like that gets me going is if you're interested in how something works, what is it that you question? What is it that you perhaps complain about? Why does someone do this? Why is the government doing this? Why are roads going this way? Surely they should have done X, Y, Z instead. And use that as a starting point to explore internship, spend time with people to learn more about that and see if, well, is that future career path? I like the way you're thinking that through.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So look, Mia, thank you for taking the time out of your, I can't even say evening. I'm going to
Hmm.
say your nighttime, um, as you're now a night owl, to, well, just, continue our conversation, share it so that other people can
Hmm.
watch and learn from your experience. And especially, you know, I just think it's fascinating the career that you've had so far. You've already stepped now into that second career
Hmm.
and on the tipping point of moving into that third one. So from an athlete to a student to an athlete, and then moving out into that workplace again. I think's really interesting and
Hmm.
fantastic that I get to have this conversation with you whilst you're going through this transition period.
Hmm.
So thanks for sharing your story. Really appreciate
Hmm.
your time. There are people who are listening and watching who are going to want to reach out to you, maybe get in a conversation. Where's the best place to find you and get in touch?
Of course, you can always find me on LinkedIn. Um, Again, it's Mithula Mia Umakanth. Please reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Mhm.
Otherwise, I'm also a student ambassador right now at UCI. So if you go on to UCI Paul Murad School of Business Student Ambassadors, you'll find me there. But the best place will be LinkedIn.
Awesome.
And I can share my LinkedIn with y'all and we can,
Absolutely. We'll
yeah.
get that in the show, in the notes as well, so people can definitely reach out. But
Hmm.
Mia, listen, I want to
Hmm.
say a massive thank you very much for sharing your story.
Hmm. Of course. Thank you so much for having me today. I really enjoyed speaking with you, Ryan.
Pretty
And it was a really nice experience.
good.